Hello YouTube. India and Russia have spiritual ties, and I know that India's scholars are keen observers. They also paid attention to my research and my writings about the inexplicable knowledge of the mysterious Russian genius Ivan Yefremov and his deep insight into India's past and its secrets. And I will speak in the future about Soviet and Russian research into India's mysteries. But today I'll talk about my research, and it had begun in the early 1990s, about certain underwater beings. And for the sake of brevity, I will refer to them as humanoids, but they'll have other names in this video. And I found them in the Hindu mythology. Let me acknowledge that I'm by no means an expert on India, just as many other Russians, fascinated by its past and the secrets it contains. The Vedas are a large body of religious text originating in ancient India. Composed in Vedic Sanskrit, the text constitute the oldest layer of Sanskrit literature and the oldest scriptures of Hinduism. Let me set the scene a little bit and tell you about Indian gods as it pertains to this video. Indra is the god of the firmament, the personified atmosphere. Indra is an ancient Vedic deity in Hinduism. He is the king of Svarga, heaven, and the Devas, gods. He is associated with lightning, thunder, storms, rains, river flows, and war. In the Vedas, he stands in the first rank among the gods. Arjuna, means white, was Indra's son and had 4 brothers. When the 5 brothers went into exile for 13 years, Arjuna continued a pilgrimage to the Himalayan mountains to placate the gods and to obtain from them celestial weapons for use in war. Although he initially battled Shiva, who disguised himself, having found out his true identity, Arjuna then worshipped him. Shiva gave him the Pasupata or Pasupati anti-missile-like warhead, one of his most powerful weapons. Shiva, also known as Mahadeva, is one of the principal deities of Hinduism. He is the supreme being in Shaivism, one of the major traditions within Hinduism. Shiva has pre-Vedic tribal roots, and the figure of Shiva as we know him today is amalgamation of various older non-Vedic and Vedic deities, including the Rig-Vedic storm god Rudra, who may also have non-Vedic origins, into a single major deity. That's how the images were amalgamated. Shiva is known as the destroyer within the Trimurti, the triple deity of supreme divinity that includes Brahma and Vishnu. In the Shaivite tradition, Shiva is the supreme lord who creates, protects, and transforms the universe. Indra, as well as other deities, came to Arjuna and gave him their own powerful weapons. Indra carried Arjuna in his transportation vehicle to Indra's heaven. There, Arjuna was immersed in learning on proper use of the weapons presented to him, and made a promise to Indra: I never would discharge these celestial weapons at mortals, except when all my other arms would have been baffled. Later, Indra sent him on a mission against the deities of the sea. Deities were the Titans, descendants from Diti, a goddess by Kasyapa. They are a race of demons and giants who made war against the gods and interfered with sacrifices. Kasyapa's son by Diti became Asuras, deities, and his sons by Aditi, Diti's sister, one of many, became Devas, Aditeyas. Nivata Kavachas, translated for Sanskrit as either clothed in impenetrable armor or as of practical application layer garment. They were a class of deities descended from Prahlada, a son of Hiranyakasipu. The Sanskrit word Ni Vata Kavacha, according to Jijit Nadumuri Ravi, my colleague in India, means Ni, no, Vata, air, Kavacha, casing, shelter, garment, and coat of mail, or sheltered in airless capsules, or wearing garments without air. Some researchers consider this as a description of a spacesuit. Jijit Nadumuri Ravi considers that it either describes their airtight garments or their airtight dwellings. Jijit Nadumuri Ravi is a researcher and writer in India, and years ago he helped my research. Now, Hiranyakasipu, in his wars with the gods, had wrestled the sovereignty of heaven from Indra and dwelt there in luxury. After the death of his father, Prahlada became the king of the deities. Okay, according to Mahabharata, the celestial race of Asuras, or Danava, demons in Vedic mythology, were 30 million in number and resided in the depths of the oceans. The Danavas were the sons of Danu. They revolted against the gods but were defeated. After their defeat, the Danavas were cast into the deepest oceans and locked there forever by Indra. As per Hindu mythology, Nivata Kavachas were the Danavas, or demons. They were humanoid with fish-like characteristics. In the Mahabharata, Nivan Kavacha's destruction is described as one of the exploits of Arjuna. Indra told him to battle the Nivata Kavachas, his enemies, whose strength increased. The gods were fearful of them. My enemies, those Danavas named Nivata Kavachas, dwell in the womb of the ocean, and they number 30 millions, and they are notorious and all of equal forms and strength and splendor. This is from the Mahabharata of Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, year 1887. I searched through this and a number of other sources to find details of the battle. Arjuna was using a car or chariot, a vehicle of some sort, driven by Matali. Arjuna was discharging the weapons. To win the battle, Arjuna discharged that celestial weapon which I had learned from Indra, even the dreadful and flaming Visoshana. Arjuna also used illusion-creating weapons, an illusion of arms capable of bewildering all beings, against the Asuras, who, of unrivaled prowess, also used horrible illusion weapons, as well as tectonic and ultrasound weapons of their own. As they battled with the illusion-creating weapons, the world around them displayed itself, then would be devoured by darkness, only to disappear from view, submerged underwater. Attacked by fierce Nivata Kavachas, Arjuna fought them and sent them to Yama, the Lord of Death, mentioned. The final annihilation of the deities was about to begin. But then they used illusion, and Arjuna could not see the Danavas anymore. Source Mahabharata, Book 3, Chapter 167. At the end, Arjuna won the battle. The Nivata Kavachas were destroyed, but perhaps not entirely, if they properly used the illusion weapon. The city of the demons destroyed by Arjuna was the Daitya city of Hiranyapura on the other side of the ocean. Well, it used to belong to celestial deities, but they were overpowered and driven out by Nivata Kavachas. So, celestial deities who were overpowered and driven out by Nivata Kavachas, those who dwelled in our oceans. Hiranyapura was the capital city of the Nivata Kavachas, and it's situated on the other side of the Great Lake, Caspian Sea, Aral, or some other large lake, which can also be Lake Baikal. Jijit Nadumuri Ravi does not have enough information to say precisely which one, but it should be closer to the Deva territories in Tibet, near Manasa Lake and Kailasa Range, while the Deva territories lie to the opposite side of the lake. I found similarities between the Nivata Kavachas and the humanoids of the Lake Baikal to be very convincing, and it was stated so in Russia's USO Secrets, the book. Now, it was a city superior to the one the Lord of Celestials, Purandara, had possessed, but only Arjuna was able to overpower the Nivata Kavachas. Then, in order to their slaughter, Indra rendered unto thee these weapons. The gods have been unable to slay these, who have been slain by thee. As Arjuna's car entered the city, he noticed that when the Danava hosts had been destroyed, all their females began to bewail in that city, like cranes in autumn. Then, with Matali entering that city, terrifying with the rattling of my car the wives of the Nivata Kavachas, behold that excellent city, superior to the city of the Celestials themselves. But what if the city was located elsewhere? Naga refers to a tribe called Nagas, who were a group of people spread throughout India during the period of the epic Mahabharata. They were also considered as one of the supernatural races, like Kinnaras and Yakshas. Vishnu, the younger brother of Deva king Indra, had slain the Nagas in the Great Lake. Indra asked Arjuna to slay the tribe of Nivata Kavachas, a clan of Asuras, living in the vicinity of the same lake. So we're not sure about the location. We'll keep looking. We now know that the Nivata Kavachas were destroyed by Arjuna, but perhaps some of them managed to escape and have operated in the oceans, seas, rivers, and lakes of our planet. I am certain that humanity will find out soon enough. Look at my research about the unidentified submersible object encountered by Soviet Navy. Read the book I co-authored with Philip Mantel, Russia's USO files. Look at my videos. Now, the hero of Mahabharata, Arjuna, returning after the war with the Asuras, talks about an interesting encounter. On my return, I managed to see the extremely great, a self-moving, wonderful city with a brilliance similar to fire or the sun, full of all the deeds done, free from sadness, diseases. Arjuna's warlike fervor was enough for that city. This flying city, shining like the sun, guided at will by virtue of the gift received by the deities, successfully resisted, then went into the bowels of the earth, then rushed into the sky, raced obliquely, then plunged into the water. Finally it was broken by my iron, sharp, well-aimed arrows, and the city of Asuras fell to the ground in the ruins. So I can see underwater battles and I can see celestial battles, according to this source. Now, Arjuna received from Shiva the weapons possessed by gods. Shiva fulfills Arjuna's request, but when it comes to the eternal weapon, he said, "Let no one ever take it into his head. Having got into the hands of a weakling, it can burn the whole world passing. It should always be used as a defense against another. Wonderful weapon, it is inevitable, but it repels a blow with any other weapon." Let's also look at the weapons of antiquity, because this is what I'm sure the humanoids, underwater humanoids, Nivata Kavachas, used against Arjuna and his people, and vice versa. Astra-vidya, the science of the possession of divine weapons in ancient India, is divided into two groups. At the first examination, natural and unnatural. The first is the weapon that is included in the sphere of influence of the god who owns it. This is the Vayavya of the wind god Vayu, wind. Varuna, rain of the lord of the waters Varuna. Vajra, thunder arrow, lightning of the thunder god Indra. I will describe this one in greater detail, but in another video. These are opposing forces of nature, deified by a person with mythological level of thinking. There is no such correlation in the unnatural group. For example, Brahmashiras is unexpectedly attributed to the creator Brahma. Brahmashiras literally means the head of Brahma. It has several interpretations. According to one of them, this is the drink of death which the gods found, wanting to get the drink of life. This drink was consumed by Shiva, which is why since then he has been depicted with a red throat. According to another, more famous description, it is a fire arrow. According to the third, a flame enclosed in a blade of grass. Brahma also wields the weapon Brahma Danda. Danda means spear or dart, which is much stronger than even Indra's arrow. The latter acts only once, while Brahma Danda can affect countries and peoples for several generations. Recently, this seemed like an exaggeration, but now we know about radiation mutations. There are more serious indications for this in the 10th book of Mahabharata. The villain Ashwatthama, who killed almost the entire army of Arjuna and his brothers under the cover of night, was the last to be overtaken in fear and used Brahmashiras. Arjuna responded in kind, but he did not destroy the Ashwatthama weapon, only stopped it. Because where the Brahmashiras weapon is beaten by other highest weapons, it doesn't rain in that country for 12 years. Two heavenly sages who immediately arrived at the scene of the event demanded to stop the use of Brahmashiras and return it to its original state. The opponents obeyed the demand, but Ashwatthama, unlike Arjuna, had difficulties in doing so. This is what he said to one of the messengers of heaven. In extreme danger, for the sake of saving my life, I used this weapon, and now I cannot absorb it again. But your word, O Lord, I will fulfill it. Here is a jewel, and here I am, but a blade of grass will stand. She will kill the fetuses in women. After all, the greatest weapon cannot be futile. I am not able, my Lord, to absorb the weapons I have released. Now I will drive this weapon into the embryos, O Lord. But I'll fulfill your will. It is difficult to get rid of the feeling that here we're talking about the impact on the system of heredity. Shiva's weapon is interesting. Shiva is sometimes called Pasupati, the Lord of living beings. Pasupati is also called the weapon of Shiva. It combines unprecedented power and controllability. When Arjuna returned to earth, he decided to demonstrate the action of Pasupati to his brothers. And now, when this wonderful weapon was put into action, the earth trembled under his feet and shook along with the trees. The rivers were stirred, even the great seas were agitated. The mountains cracked, the winds were disturbed. The fire began to burn dimly, the radiant sun was darkened. Arjuna, Arjuna, don't use that wonderful weapon. After all, you can never use it aimlessly, and you should not hit the target without extreme need. Great misfortunes can happen if these weapons are abused. Other types of heavenly weapons make any objects and obstacles disappear, lead people into complete confusion, and affect the psyche like modern gas bombs. The existence of restrictions on the use of higher weapons is emphasized repeatedly in Mahabharata. The same Arjuna gets into his hands Brahmashiras with the order. This is an extraordinary and absolutely irresistible weapon ever. It should not be used by you against people, because if thrown at a weak person, it can burn the whole world. If any non-human enemy attacks you, O hero, then use this weapon in battle to defeat him. And here's another description. Then Rama shot an arrow of irresistible power, a terrible one, bringing death. Instantly, a far-flying arrow released by Rama ignited with a great flame that mighty Rakshasa. With a team of horses, with a chariot, he was completely engulfed in fire, and he broke up into 5 basic natures. His backbone, meat, and blood no longer held. Their weapons burned so that the ashes were not visible. There are other descriptions of Brahma's weapons in Mahabharata, in which it can be more quickly identified with an atomic bomb. A sparkling projectile, possessing the radiance of fire devoid of smoke, was released. A thick fog suddenly covered the army. All sides of the horizon were plunged into darkness. Evil-bearing whirlwinds rose. The clouds with a roar rushed to the height of the sky. Even the sun seemed to spin. The world, scorched by the heat of this weapon, seemed to be in a fever. The elephants, burned by the flames of weapons, fled in terror. Further, it is said about thousands of chariots, people and elephants that were burned, incinerated on the spot by this terrible explosion. We have never heard or seen anything equal to such weapons. Externally, this weapon looked like a huge iron arrow, which looked like a giant messenger of death. To neutralize one such iron arrow, which was not used, the hero ordered to grind it into a fine powder. But even this was not enough to protect people. The crushed remains of the arrow were drowned in the sea. It is difficult to explain the behavior of the soldiers who survived the explosion. The battle is not over yet, but everyone who finds themselves in the explosion zone hurriedly runs to the nearest river to wash their clothes and weapons there. It has already been said that the ancient people probably knew how to fly. The mythological tradition of ancient India talks about a variety of flying chariots and, of course, other flying devices. For example, when morning came, Rama got into the heavenly chariot that Pushpaka had sent him with Vipishanda and prepared for flight. This chariot moved by itself. It was large and beautifully painted. It had 2 floors with many rooms and windows. When the chariot made its way through the air, it made a monotonous sound. At the moment of departure, however, the sound was different. At the command of Rama, this beautiful chariot rose noisily into this air. In another place, we read that when the flying chariot ascended, the roar filled all 4 sides of the horizon. In one of the ancient Sanskrit books, it is said that at the moment of departure, the chariot roars like a lion, Ramayana. The epic says that the heavenly chariot shone like fire on a summer night, was like comet in the sky, flamed like a red fire, Ramayana. It was set in motion by winged lightning, and the whole sky was illuminated when it flew through it, Mahabharata. In Indian and Celtic or Celtic legends, there are descriptions of the internal structure of aircraft. The Sanskrit poetic source Samarangana Sudradhara devotes 230 stanzas to this. First, however, a reservation is made. We do not inform about how to make parts for a flying chariot. not because it is unknown to us, but in order to keep it secret. The details of the design are not reported, because if this information became public, this device would be used for evil. In a number of ancient Indian works, it is also said about the altitude of the flight. The author reports that he soared above the kingdom of the winds. By means of these devices, we read in the Sanskrit book, the inhabitants of the earth can rise into the air, and the heavenly inhabitants can descend to the earth. In another passage of the same manuscript, it is said that air chariots can fly both in the solar region and further in the star region. Imagine that. Can you imagine that they knew about space flight back then? According to legends, the air chariots of the ancient Celts could also rise in the sky to where there are amazing lands, palaces of the gods. Air battles took place between the flying chariots. The chariots even raided cities. Aircraft were shot down from the ground by missiles. We noticed in the sky what at first seemed to be a large purple cloud that resembled fierce flames. Many glittering projectiles flew out of this mass with a roar like the simultaneous thunder of thousands of drums. From there fell many weapons, winged with gold, and hundreds of thunder arrows that exploded with a roar, as well as many hundreds of fiery wheels. Loud was the neighing of falling horses struck by these weapons, and the roar of huge elephants felled by explosions. Mahabharata. But now the defenders aimed their weapons at one of the aircraft, the language of the destroyer, the sister of death. The glittering projectile soared up into the night sky and entered a star-like formation. The enemy chariot fell from the sky with a terrifying noise. And here's how the attack of aircraft on the city is described. Kukara began to bring down lightning on the city from all sides, but this was not enough, and then a projectile was fired from the aircraft, which contained the power of the entire universe, and the city began to burn. The flash was as bright as 1,000 suns at the zenith. Nowadays, people who have seen the flash of the nuclear explosion also compare it with the radiance of thousands of suns. Let's look at the ancient Vedic weapons. Along with the ideas of creating combat and civilian vimanas, the most ancient Vedic texts provide descriptions and in some cases technologies and operating instructions for other powerful weapons that were known to previous human civilizations thousands and possibly millions of years ago. Remember what I told you about the nanotechnology discovered in the Ural Mountains and how far back it goes. Just one example. Anyway, many of them were triggered by subtle sound vibrations, information codes that affect elements, atoms of material energy. With the help of mantras, sound vibrations, you can both start and stop the actions of a particular weapon. Surprisingly, it looks like our ancestors knew nuclear, hydrogen, annihilation, laser, and psychic weapons. And some types of weapons even involved the forces of nature. Here are the names and brief descriptions of only some of the weapons mentioned in the Vedas. Ardra, a weapon that causes flooding. Arhani, a weapon in the form of a lightning strike. Brahmastra, nuclear weapons. Vala, a weapon that causes rain. Vatra, a weapon that causes hurricane. Vidana, a weapon that tears apart. Vinidra, a weapon that causes drowsiness. Daryana is a drying, dehydrating weapon. Dharmanasha is a weapon that can bind the enemy. Ishika is a burning weapon with supernatural abilities. Modana is an intoxicating weapon. Moha, a weapon that causes loss of consciousness. Narayana is a water weapon. Nirashya is a weapon that takes away courage. Saumanasa is a weapon that affects the mind. Tejasa is an energy weapon. Shabdaveditva, a weapon that flies at sound and hits invisible targets. The ancient civilizations that we speak about, like Lemuria, Hyperborea, and Atlantis, and of course the ones we just don't know about, thousands and millions of years ago, possessed powerful types of weapons. For example, such as Brahmastra, nuclear weapons. Now think of the possibility that the formidable USOs are armed with some of the weapons I have described in this video. And what they would do to humans if we get in their ways. And they, USOs, based on the description of the Soviet military commanders, can move at incredible speeds. Now, in ancient Tibet, India, and other places, they knew about the possibility of uninhabited worlds in the universe. I want to tell you something interesting now. Because, as I said, Russian scientists, Soviet scientists, we have been looking at India very close. And I dare say maybe more than some other nations in this world. And I already talked to you about Verik and others, but I want to read you something else. This is from the winner of the Jawaharlal Nehru Prize, the researcher of India, Lyudmila Shaposhnikova. In her book, The Years and Days of Madras, talks about the city of dancing Shiva, Chidambaram, where the temple of heaven is located, belonging to a strange community with a peculiar appearance. They lead an extremely close lifestyle and allegedly keep ancient cosmic knowledge, worshipping cosmic energy, and claim to be descendants of aliens. This special caste of Brahmins has been living on the territory of the temple for many centuries and is the keeper of secret knowledge and history. The whole life of the Dikshitar community of Nataraja, that's another name for Shiva, is centered around the temple. This is their main property and at the same time the main occupation in life. They never leave the temple complex, marry only in the circle of their community, use a special language, and consider themselves aliens or descendants of ancient civilizations. They exist only in Chidambaram, and their appearance and customs have nothing in common with any of the peoples of India. Dikshitars speak only their own language. They rarely communicate with people outside the community, especially with Europeans. But those rare lucky people who had a chance to talk with them say that their knowledge causes amazement and admiration. However, most of all they delight with their dances imitating the movements of the god Shiva. Look at their movements, the flexibility of their arms and legs. You will really believe that they are the descendants of some alien civilization. Meanwhile, the dance is part of the ritual of worshipping Shiva. And if he doesn't exist, our world will not exist either. Without the daily prayers and dances, Shiva will decide that people have forgotten him, will surely get angry and begin his dance of death, the dance of destruction with which the days of humanity will end. This is according to their beliefs. But since according to some sources, the Dikshitars have been true to themselves and their traditions for 3,000 years, you can rely on them and not be afraid of an imminent apocalypse. The end of the world is still far away, and nothing will prevent you from enjoying the beauty of Chidambaram. The origin of their sacred Rahasya hall, secret room, as well as the temple itself, remains a mystery. According to legend, it was built in the Agalocha forest. It's a type of a mangrove tree, by the divine architect Vishwakarma, after receiving knowledge about Chidambaram Rahasya from the sage Patanjali between the 2nd and the 4th centuries BC. Chidambaram temple embodies the ancient heritage of Hindu faith and culture. It is believed that it is here that Shiva eternally performs his cosmic dance of bliss, Ananda Tandava. And it's very important, of course, to the Hindu tradition. Today, the temple complex in Chidambaram is a grandiose, magnificent and very rich structure. Over the 3,000 years of history of its existence, the temple has accumulated a lot of valuables. Statues of local gods are decorated with pearls, rubies, and emeralds. The roof of the main temple is covered with tiles made of pure gold. And what is the figure of Shiva carved from a whole piece of a rare purple ruby? However, the main treasure is still located inside the golden temple, because a wooden temple is hidden under a stone building. Its age cannot be accurately calculated. According to legends, it was built on the very place where Shiva performed his cosmic dance, consisting of 108 movements. All of them, from the first to the last, are depicted on the bas-reliefs of stone temples. It is believed that they contain information about laws of existence, and who will be able to repeat exactly all these movements, absolutely all the secrets of the universe, will be revealed to him or to her. Alas, even Dikshitars cannot repeat the cosmic dance, but according to the stories of pilgrims, even the reproduction of 2 or 3 steps, 10 steps, greatly clarifies the mind. And of course, this action will surely send you divine mercy, which always comes when a person is engaged in spiritual practice, participates in services, honors the memory of saints, and baths in sacred rivers. Then this is what they'll tell you at the temple. Ablution is the act of washing oneself. It may refer to ablution as hygiene, ablution as ritual purification. So, speaking of ablution, Shiva Ganga is located in the north of the temple complex. It was once a lotus pond in a mangrove forest. Now it is lined with stone and looks more like a rectangular pool. However, this does not affect the quality of the waters in any ways. They were healing and they remain so. So it is told. I wonder what can be found in ponds and lakes of India as well. And I urge other researchers to look more into this country, and I will do my best to bring the knowledge accumulated by Russian researchers of paleocontact, paranormal, and researchers of India's culture. India is a magnificent country with ancient history. I look forward to doing more research. I appreciate your attention, and if you like my videos, please support me. You'll find out how in the description to this video. Please tell others about my channel and please subscribe. Thank you.